it's that this interaction between poor nutrition, which then makes for immune system breakdown. And then instead of trying to fix the problem, they go to doctors with frequent infections and get more drugs, antibiotics, pain medication, symptomatic treatment, antidepressants, whatever it is. So doctors become, they don't become a good gatekeeper keeping people away from drugs. They become a conduit to be able to access drugs.
I'm Robin Jeep with Enliven Foods. Recently I sat down with Joel Fuhrman, a name that many of you may know. He's a brilliant board-certified medical doctor who's been practicing medicine for over 30 years, reversing diseases, preventing diseases with whole food plant-based nutrition. And he also saved my life. I lived with the Fuhrmans from 2005 to 2006 to help them develop their business. And Dr. Fuhrman will be talking about some of his personal journey on how he came into understanding this way of eating. So stay tuned. Fast. And so I became kind of an anomaly because I was able to live with all of this pathogenic bacteria in me because I'm just loading myself with micronutrients. And yes, so this bacteria, I've got a lot of damage. My stomach lining has been almost completely eroded. Parietal cells, they don't know if I even have any more parietal cells to produce the acid in my stomach. But there's new science that shows that that can come back, and I do believe it is coming back because I have some science.
Yes, I think that, not that I know all the details, but I think that even though improvements can be very slow at times and
Yes.
almost hard to recognize, you still make slow improvements over the years and can come back, can recover, make a lot of recovery. If not a full recovery, you can get a lot better as time goes on. Not to get off track with our discussion today, but I'd probably have two recommendations for you to
Yes.
things to try. One is called fermented wheat germ extract. Metatrol. I think it's Metatrol. It's fermented wheat germ extract. Fermented wheat germ extract is FWGE. A lot of scientific studies on it. And I wouldn't recommend you take it in the dosings that they give it for people with cancer. I would just take instead of taking they usually give it to 2 capsules twice a day. I would
Yes.
you have the lowest, just take one a day.
Well, could I take maybe like 1/4 to start with?
Yeah, take 1/4 of the recommended dose, which is 1 capsule, not 4 capsules, I mean, just one a day. The same thing is true with this product. These are fermented products that are natural, but they don't contain any salt at all. They're sodium free, different than as you can imagine, other fermented foods are full of salt.
Right.
There's a product that's very unique. It's called Haelan 951. Have you heard of that? It's a special type of heirloom soybean grown in Mongolia. And they take about 35 pounds of soybeans to make 1 8-ounce bottle of this fermented soy product, which makes which actually is like taking immunoglobulins because it has it's so easily absorbed and concentrated, but it's very expensive.
Yes.
But you don't have to use it in dosage that they recommend for people with cancer. So even though it costs about $60 a bottle, an 8-ounce bottle, and they're recommending people take 1 or 2 ounces a day, so people are spending like $60 every week, you can just take a teaspoon a day and make the bottle last for 3 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So in other words, just a small amount. And with you want to start small. The only problem with Halen, it's really a phenomenal product for people who have bloating and bacterial problems in their gut, is it doesn't taste good. It tastes bad. So when you put it in your mouth, you have to either rinse your mouth with water to get the taste out, or you have something you're eating right next to it. Like I can take a spoonful of that and then put some oatmeal in my mouth to get the taste out, or put a piece of mango in my mouth, or some cherries in my mouth, or drink. In other words, it doesn't taste good.
No.
I mean, it doesn't smell that bad, but people would say this tastes vile. Don't expect it to be tasty. You know what I mean? But the only ingredient is soybean. Organic soybean is the only ingredient, and they fermented it in nitrogen, so they didn't have to use sodium. And it's just it's a clean fermentation process, where there's no pathogenic or bacteria that are unfavorable to the gut. That's very healing. These are very natural. And so it might be able to amplify the effects of the immunoglobulins you're using.
Oh.
Because that's why how people are utilizing these products most with autoimmune disease or cancer. It amplifies their other therapies because obviously besides the fact that it heals the gut lining, they heal the gut lining, but they also have effects on help normalizing hormones in the body, like obviously preventing breast and prostate cancer because the, genistein and the isoflavones from soy are highly absorbable in the fermented form. So it gives you more of the soy benefits that are hard to absorb when you're eating the whole bean. But in any case, I'd probably recommend to consider those two
I
products.
will. I attribute what you taught me to keeping me alive. And since I've been doing this research and I've become kind of a specialist in all of this from learning, I do probably about at least 2 or 3 hours of studying the literature every day. And now that we've got AI, are you familiar with DeepSeek
Yeah,
AI?
of course. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I'm just, going to town, constantly studying stuff. And because of your training, because when I did that Nutritarian course, when you first came out with that, we had to study that book on, there was a book about reading studies, learning how to read studies.
Right.
And thankfully, because of all of your training that I've gotten from you, is what's enabled me to do what I'm doing and to learn what I've learned. It's all because of you. So I always go back and I teach a lot of people. I have been working, well, since I've been discovering all this stuff through myself, there are a lot of people struggling with maybe not to the degree of which I have it, but some, yes, some are really sick. And so I see that this is really epidemic, this gut issue. And it's all because you predicted this back when you wrote Disease Proof. Wait, I'm sure before, but when you wrote Disease Proof Your Child, you said, remember when you said that our generation, our children will not outlive us. Many of our children will not outlive us in this generation. Remember when you said that, you wrote that?
Well, I don't know exactly what I said there, but sometimes you have, but in any case, we are seeing,
Yes.
unfortunately, more diabetes, more cancer in children, we're seeing more autoimmune conditions. We are seeing more degeneration. And my book, Fast Food Genocide, talks about that a lot, how
Yes.
not just eating food in a fast food restaurant, but eating foods that we consider called fast food, which is like processed foods, and how it damages the body, not just the body itself, but also damages the brain.
Now, I think that's your best book, Fast Food Genocide.
Thank you.
I love that book. So, anyway, so now your prediction, what you said back then, is now coming to pass. And so, I'm seeing that it's because of everybody eating all this junk. They don't have especially because my focus is on the microbiome. They're not able to nourish their microbiome. And since your microbiome makes up 70 something percent of your immune system, from what we know now, maybe more, these people are wiping out their immune systems. Kind of like mine was wiped out. I was a canary in the coal mine by doing those antibiotics every day.
Well, that's
And
the thing. It's that this interaction between poor nutrition, which then makes for immune system breakdown. And then instead of trying to fix the problem, they go to doctors with frequent infections and get more drugs, antibiotics, pain medication, symptomatic treatment, antidepressants, whatever it is. So doctors become, they don't become a good gatekeeper keeping people away from drugs. They become a conduit to be able to access drugs easily, and those drugs further complicate the damage. And so most of what doctors do can be hurtful because instead of using the opportunity to get people to make lifestyle changes to improve their health, instead they become more reliant on medications, which just reinforces their hopelessness and their idea that they think that they don't have to change their own lifestyle habits. When you have high blood pressure, you don't have to cut out the salt and eat healthy and lose weight. You just can take a drug. When you have diabetes, it's all the drugs, in other words, are the enablers that people can just keep living their life, ignoring the causative factors of their disease processes.
and they're just getting worse and worse
They
as
get worse. They actually get worse as they don't even see they have high blood pressure anymore. For example, they're on blood pressure medications. They think the blood pressure is normal, but the blood vessel disease is actually worsening over time because they didn't take away the cause and they're covering it up with blood pressure medication. Actually, most diabetic medications accelerate the progression of the diabetes and leads to more diabetic deaths. We have the Accord study um, showed that when the government had to come and stop the study because obviously after so many years, people getting more medical care had more diabetic related mortality, morbidity and mortality. So sometimes, more because some of the drugs can accelerate the progression of disease. But the problem with the drugs is not only the bad effect they have, but it takes away the people's attention to changing their life and removing the cause, and they just and they just continue the disease continues to advance. So we really have a vicious cycle in America today. We have so much data and so much information that we actually have this unprecedented opportunity in human history where people could actually live longer than ever before and not get cancer, heart attacks, strokes, and dementia if they put into action what we've learned, but instead they've gone down this rabbit hole in the wrong direction.
And that's what this podcast is going to be about, is actually putting it into action. But I want to kind of go back. I want to get organized here because it's very easy for me to just go off and start talking about, anything, rabbit trailing from one thing to another. So I've got my notes here and I wanted to go back to, there's some things that I wondered about you that I never asked you is, so it was your father basically who instilled an interest in nutrition in you, wasn't it, in the beginning?
Yes, because I was a kid and
Yeah.
he was sickly and he read, I think the first book he read was You Don't Have to Be Sick by Jack Duntrop. So that was the first book he read. Then he continued to read Dr. Shelton's works and he was getting healthier. And at first I thought he was gone off his rocker.
How old were you?
Probably around 10 or 11, 10 or 11, 12, young teens. And um, he was changing his diet and trying to change our diet. And our thoughts was, how could everybody in the world be wrong and this be right?
I think
How is it that everything we've learned and everything people believe is wrong and this is the right stuff? It just didn't make sense that there could be, but obviously as I matured and got older and did more of the reading myself, I realized there's a lot of value to glean from this. And obviously, so by my mid-teens, I was already, I was in the world figure skating team, so
right.
a world-class athlete and then trying to eat healthier for better stamina and performance. But so I did have a lot of nutritional training when I was young through the advocacy through my father's interest in natural hygiene.
Well, was your mother preparing healthy foods back then?
Yes, but by the time we were like 12 or 13, we were eating significantly healthier. We'd still have occasional animal products, but we were certainly eating a lot of mostly natural foods and stopped all the junk food.
Interesting. So you were eating lots of vegetables and fruits and all of that stuff.
And beans and nuts. Yeah, we were getting Vitamix when we were a kid, and we had Jaffe Brothers, and we had all the different Bazzini Nut Company. We started eating all these healthy foods when we were young.
Yeah, I remember the Jaffe brothers because when I
Yeah.
was, well, so I didn't know all of this, but really came from your parents.
Yeah, mostly my father. My mother was more resistant. It took her more years to come around.
But she did, but obviously she fed you all that way. He must have insisted.
They kind of compromised. Yeah, so she obviously she ate much healthier than most people. She maybe wasn't perfect, but I remember when I was young, my mother used to smoke cigarettes. And we used to be spent to go to the neighbors' houses and pick up and borrow cigarettes that she could have a smoke. And then we got it to a certain age where we refused to get her cigarettes anymore, and she eventually quit.
Well, so then I remember you had some kind of injury, and I never knew exactly what this heel injury was. What from figure skating? Because I know you were like third in the world class pairs figure skater?
Yes, I was third in the professional world championships in pair skating with my sister. But when we were ranked number two in the United States in 1973, then the team that was the first place team had retired. So we were waiting to compete into the national championships and become the number one team in the United States. And at that point, I got hurt. and could not make the national championships.
Oh, I
I
bet that was crushing.
It was emotionally crushing. Yeah, it was really emotionally because in that part of my life, my whole world was figure skating.
Oh,
You know what I mean? It's like it becomes your whole world. You become so you look back and you say, I had such an unbalanced and childhood in that respect because I didn't have a normal social life or normal I was just training all the time. In any case, and to a certain degree. I was cognizant and concerned that even though with my own children, should I want them to be so invested in sport so it makes their life so distorted where everything else where it becomes overly, becomes the magnifying driver to your life in such a distorted way. So I'm kind of, so even though I got a lot of satisfaction and pleasure from it, with the injury and subsequent to it, you think back and you say, was that the kind of life you want for your kids too? And it's questionable. So my kids they got into gymnastics and cheerleading, and my son did soccer, and then he played tennis, but whatever it is, they didn't really, I kind of wanted them, they were more well-rounded and had more of a normal life. You know what I mean?
one of the things that I always really appreciated, because I remember I went to some of the girls' cheerleading uh,
Yeah.
performances that I was always impressed at how they would get stack up on each other and all the
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
These girls were really good.
Yeah.
But one of the things I really realized, thought about it a lot, was that by having them so active in sports where it was important to them, the competing in sports, it kept them away from drugs,
Mm.
and all the bad influences, because their focus was on that and their grades. Because in this day and age, you've got to have your kids focused in something, or the other stuff's just so prevalent.
Yeah, sure. There's still, I would always question, there was some narcissistic, though, part of cheerleading where they put on the
Yes.
makeup and they'd have to win, and the team would be bashing a kid who made a mistake, and they came in third or something in the world championships, and now this one kid is made to feel bad because they made the mistake in the program. It was always somewhat, it didn't have enough compassion and kindness. You know what I mean?
I know. I remember watching and thinking, but I do say, if you have a choice, drugs, bad influence, perhaps, you know, death and, all kinds of horrible
Yeah.
things, or a little narcissism here. I think I'd
And
pick.
some of the parents would get crazy about the competitiveness and having their kid. And I'm saying this is supposed to be for fun. They're doing
Right.
this because they enjoy this, and it's a great outlet for them. They love the physical, they love performing and all this stuff, but still to take it so seriously and to make it, it's not going to be their whole life. And whether they come in second or third, it doesn't matter. If somebody they put in a good effort, they're having fun. It was just I was I tempered that influence of like, you gotta win and you gotta, don't make a mistake, I'm gonna kill you. It's like,
Yeah, because you had the experience of actually, really seriously
yeah,
competing.
and
And
I would have enjoyed my own skating career more
yes,
if I wasn't so, you had to win. It was like, sure, perform and have people enjoy your performance, but and enjoy what you're doing. But hope the other competitors do their best and it doesn't matter who's ahead, who's first, second, or third. Who cares? Is that going to affect your happiness in your life long term, whether you came in first or second or third or fourth? It becomes when you're young, it becomes such a critical, and you become so nervous. If I make one little mistake, I'm going to lose, I'm going to blow my whole year's work. But it shouldn't have been that. There's too much emphasis on having to win, and not just enjoying what you're doing and having the crowd enjoy what you're doing and having to be the best is the part that I've come to see is would have been better without that added stress on you.
that's the wisdom of getting older.
Yeah.
Well, so I know that must mean, from talking about this, hearing that must have been so emotionally crushing when, because you're so competitive and now you can't compete and it's going to affect other people, you having that injury. I'm sure you felt
Yeah, I
just,
couldn't go to the Olympics. I
don't you know that affected your immune system and affected your healing, being so crushed, because it's.
yeah. Well, I don't know.
So then you injured your heel, wasn't that it? Did you come down
Yes,
on
I pushed my heel bone through the fat pad underneath.
Oh
I
God.
split out that normal
Oh.
cushion you have under the heel. You know what I mean? And that just takes forever to reestablish, if ever it ever gets as like it should have been. So obviously I still got back into skating again, I still skied, do snow skiing and moguls and enjoy running and do tennis. I do stuff, but of course I wear an orthotic that's cupped and
Oh.
that I don't hit my heel hits down a flat surface. It's like a cupped and cushioned, orthotic underneath there. So I'm fine, but I probably in some way did some permanent damage to the heel of that foot.
Well, so then you went to Dr. Sheldon's place in San Antonio, right?
Yeah, yes, I went there, I fasted there, and they almost killed me, you know.
You did it for 40 days?
Well, I fasted 10 days at home. I was going to NYU at the time on crutches.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't see that my heel didn't get any better, which was probably, shouldn't have expected fasting to make it better. I was thinking I had some calcifications that should be absorbed. I was 20 years old at the time. I was hospitalized in Lenox Hill Hospital in New York City under the care of Joe Namath's doctor. The Olympic Committee sent me that they wanted Dr. Nicholas to take care of me. And he would come in and terrorize me. He would be pushing on his finger in there, and I'd be jumping through the roof because it was so tender. And then one day the nurse comes in and gives me an antibiotic to take. And I say, "Why are you giving me an antibiotic?" And she says, "The doctor's doing surgery on you tomorrow." I said, "Surgery? Nobody discussed surgery with me." And he says, so I said, "Well, have the doctor come and discuss it with me. I'm not going to take, you can't just put me in for surgery without discussing it." So he discusses it and he tells me he's going to open up the heel and lacerate it with a scalpel like a checkerboard to stimulate healing in the area. He's going to make scores in it. We don't know what he's looking at, what he's doing. And I said, "How many times have you done this with other people?" He said he hasn't. But they're studying it in animals if lacerations can. So I said, "No way you're doing that to my foot." I got out of there. So I left the hospital. I was exercising in bed. I was doing lifting weights. I couldn't really walk on that leg, um, and that's when I started to fast. And then after that 10-day fast at home, I contacted Dr. Vetrano's health school, Dr. Vetrano, um, and I ate for maybe a week. So I still had lost maybe 12 pounds of fasting. Then I flew down there and they fasted me for 36 days straight after my 10-day fast at home. That's a total of 46 days of just on water. And that was totally irresponsible. It almost killed me. And and I can't believe that even my parents let me do it. And let a 20-year-old kid do that and let them almost kill me. Left me alone down there with them.
Did they
Um,
come see you? Did they see what you looked like after that period
no,
of
my
time?
father stayed with me the first like week and a half or 2 weeks I was there, and then flew home to go back to work, and he left me there the last 2 weeks of the month I was there. I was there for maybe 6 weeks, I don't know. So I was there by myself. I came home looking like an Auschwitz victim at 86 pounds, being 150 pounds of muscle. Now I'm 86 pounds of bone with my eyeballs sticking out and can you imagine how would you expect a person to become a world-class competitive athlete from 86 pounds to be able to build back the strength and stamina and muscle and strength? They completely destroyed my potential to get back into the Olympics at that point because there was no, it seemed like I was used as an experiment at Lenox Hill by Dr. Nicholas, and then I was used as an experiment by Dr. Vetrano to see how long I could fast without killing me. And so, I survived, but it didn't, but in any case, it was not a favorable experience.
Well, what happened to
I
your
should have
heel?
not trusted, at 20 years old, I was believing because of the things they had taught about nutrition that I respected. I thought it was good but obviously I should have never, agreed to do that. Because once you're fasting like 2 or 3 weeks, you're so weak, you don't even know, you're just like lying in bed hibernating. And you're so weak and tired, I'm relying on the doctor taking care of you to tell you when to break the fast. And I'm just, I don't even, anyway.
There's a parable in this, that all this internet stuff and a lot of these things, there's a lot of truth in there. You'll
Yeah.
find, but then they go to these extremes and they do these exaggerated things, or they miss something, and then people follow all this, just blindly follow it just because the
Yes.
person was right in this. they assume they're right in everything.
Exactly. Right.
Yep. So that's,
Right.
so
And me
how
being
did,
naive and 20 years old, I was just,
yes.
I didn't, you know,
Well, I guess your parents were, I mean, they just wanted the best for you.
and they trusted my father and me to know what we were doing, you know, because um, I was very driven to get well, and I would do anything to get well. You know what I mean? You said you would shave your head. I would not eat for a month to anything to get my foot back again. You know what I mean?
Did
It was like,
you got it back? How did you get it? So did it work? Did the fast actually work or not?
I don't know.
What happened? How did you heal? When did you heal?
Well, I started walking again after the fast, but maybe just staying off my foot those 2 months, maybe because because earlier in the year it would get a little better, and I tried to skate again, and it would get worse again, and I would, you know, didn't want to give up skating. I kept expecting it to heal. Maybe the fact that I just gave up trying to get on back on the ice and gave up trying to get it better, and just took all this time fasting and just resting around, maybe that helped it somewhat. But it wasn't totally better. But I could walk again after the fast, but I could hardly walk because I was such a chicken. I was so frail now and lost all my muscle. I remember going back to NYU because I missed a month of classes. So I went back to my classes weighing like 90 pounds now. And I tripped on the sidewalk. I was so weak and I was so not used to walking that I tripped on the sidewalk and smashed my teeth, my front teeth out.
Oh,
So I go to class and carrying my books, and I said I gotta miss class again because I just fell on my face and I'm bleeding. And the teacher says, "No, no, go, take care of yourself. Don't worry about it." You know. And so I came to class with my face bleeding. That I was so weak that I couldn't even catch myself because I was holding my books in my hands. That when I tripped, I hit my face on the ground. You know.
gosh, I didn't realize you'd
So
had so much suffering. You seemed like, I always thought of you as like always this kind of super, you're one of these people that's got a strong constitution and just never had any real, other than the heel. I knew that that was a problem, but never, but I didn't know the depth of it that you've really, I mean, you're like all of us that kind of all these people that go into seeking all these other means to get well, you got into it from your own suffering.
true,
Okay.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that prolonged fast caused some degree of, you could say, starvation-induced cardiomyopathy.
Yeah.
Starvation-induced cardiomyopathy from fasting so long, you know?
And so you have
So,
that now.
yes, I think, what's that?
So you have
I
some
think
cardio.
that I think that that's affected my life, my whole life. But because I'm living so healthily, it doesn't seem to be affecting me. But I did have some, you know, but there is some damage to my heart from that long fast. Yeah.
Well, there's something I'll go into from here. One of the things Dr. Hazen's doing a lot of research on COVID and the microbiome. And you know that the COVID and the injections are the vaccinations because you're getting spike protein. So the spike protein, what she's discovered, she's the one who discovered the spike protein in the stool. And so that's when they started looking into the sewer systems. You remember that when COVID was going on, they would in the different cities. Well, she was
Yeah, sure.
instrumental in that. So the spike protein resides in the gut lining, and it's like still there 3 years later. I mean, it's still, and it destroys the bifidobacterium. And so, of course, the bifidobacterium she's discovered is our primary. It's almost like, I hope I'm saying this right. This may be my own idea of it, but it's like it's the master regulator of the microbiome. It kind of makes sure that everybody gets what they need and everybody's taken care of. And so once the bifido's gone, or you're reducing the bifido, then the immune system dramatically decreases. And so that's what the spike protein does. And so you can see why now, I mean, it's one of the things it does. There are probably a lot more things it does, but that's why you can see so many problems after long COVID and why people get long COVID. And some people get the injections and they start having all kinds of bad reactions to it that are long lasting. And so, for example, with myself, I had very low bifidobacterium. I think the only reason, thank God for you, that I had any bifidobacterium was because of the diet that I was on, the Nutritarian diet. But I got COVID, a very mild case of it, in 2023, I think. And I had it like for 3 or 4 days, and it was just basically a backache and achy joints, and that was it. Well, then all of a sudden, all my sensitivities were just amplified, much worse. And it took months to get where I could eat, eat enough food again to survive on. And then I was exposed to what I'm sure was COVID back in October by a kid that was very, very sick. And I didn't know he was sick, and I was around him. And I came, and it was like there was a COVID that was really attacking people's GIs around here in 2023. And so I got it, and I knew that the symptoms were weird. They were different. But it lasted about 3 days. Well, before that, because I'd been on Dr. Hazen's protocol, I was eating so much. I was starting to really be able to eat lots of, different foods. I was eating solid foods. My diet had a lot more variety in it. So then I got they're calling it long haul. So I couldn't now, since October, I've had to go back to pureed foods, and I'm very limited just in those vegetables and the beans. That's all I can eat. And I do have to do a little small amount of olive oil because I can't get any fat any other way. So I got this long COVID. So I was talking to Dr. Hazen about it, and she said, well, it's because it just goes after the bifidobacterium. And she said, Robin, you're very low in bifidobacterium, so it's just kind of basically wiping it out again, and we have to start all over from point A. And so she said, please do not get around anybody that you know is sick. Don't get exposed, because it's just going to wipe it out again. And so now I stay, I don't get around a lot of people. I'm careful about who I'm around. She said, just while we build this up, because I know you got COVID. And it's
Yeah,
very,
no big deal.
it's very
You
insidious.
didn't get the COVID vaccine though, right?
I didn't get the vaccine. You didn't get the vaccine.
Yeah.
You told me,
No,
at
I did
least,
not get the vaccine.
yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
when I first
I didn't
heard
want
about
to,
that
it
vaccine,
was too experimental and too, you don't know what could, the long-term effects with these things that came out so fast and without, a good track record. You don't know I wouldn't take that kind of chance.
I
But,
remember when I
in any case,
first heard about it, it was like alarm systems were just going off in my whole being. I was telling Mark, I'm not getting that. I'm not getting that. And
yeah,
she
I know a
says,
lot of people we know a lot of people that had long-term, symptoms and long-term damage from the COVID vaccine as well. But of course, people could argue, well, it helped a lot of people too. Well, but in
we
any
don't,
case, each person has to do what's best for them.
everybody I know who has not had a vaccine and that's been relatively healthy have done very well. Do you know Mark has never even had a single COVID symptom ever? Nothing. And I know several people that have just never, they've been around people and they've never ever even had a symptom. Don't you know? And
Well, look,
Hazen says she thinks it's because they have a lot of bifidobacterium.
well, we know that the immune system is housed in the intraepithelial lymphocyte behind the villi of the small intestines. And now the most recent findings with regard to longevity, nutrition, and the microbiome has to do with being able to tolerate a diversity of different types of plant fibers and phytonutrients from plants. That we used to think it's just taking the probiotic, but now we know that we get a healthier microbiome and a healthier immune response when we take in a lot of different nutritional variety, including a variety of green vegetables, a variety of different types of mushrooms, and a variety of different types of plants like scallion, onion, and sprouts. The fact is that having a diverse amount of phytonutrients, a diverse amount of micronutrients, and a diverse amount of different fibers leads to the best immune response with the full vitality of the intraepithelial lymphocytes. And by the way, the biofilm that now becomes adherent to the villi in the small intestines not only not only utilize calories like sugar, but they slow the absorption of sugar into the bloodstream. So they make it when you eat fruit, you don't have such a glycemic rush. So the microbiome, and scientists call it the second meal effect. It means when you eat healthy enough, then when you have that mango, the mango is now lower glycemic because the biofilm is more robust. And so
Oh,
It's,
okay. So that biofilm by eating all of the plant foods makes the biofilm thicker?
yes, by eating a wider variety of plant phytonutrients and plant fibers, and even increasing the variety of within one category. In other words, instead of just eating broccoli all the time, the fact that you have artichokes and asparagus and broccoli and zucchini, the fact that you have different green vegetables, you have different types of mushrooms in your diet and different types of, so we're talking here about that the diversity of different types of foods would have been greater in primitive people. But in any case, our diets have become so narrowly focused. And when we studied the health of people's immune systems and the health of the microbiome, we found that the healthiest microbiome is the longest lived, and the most immune protection occurs from this wide diversity of foods in your diet. And of course, it's hard to get a wide diversity of organic foods, but we do have that availability today to grow our foods, to use regenerative organic agriculture, to put a garden in our house, to grow sprouts on our counters. We have the availability to go to a store and get different types of mushrooms, to take mushroom extracts. We have the ability to increase the diversity of healthy foods, and that's what a nutritarian diet is about. It's about looking at what people eat and say, what category of foods and what individual foods have been documented in the scientific literature with corroborative evidence, with multiple studies, are shown to lower rates of cancer, slow aging, and increased lifespan. What foods are they that have the most link to increased lifespan? And that's where the acronym GBOMS come from. GBOMS comes from because it stands for greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds. And we're talking here about eating a variety of each of it. Within those large categories, the greens, the beans, the onions, within those individual categories, which have been shown to extend human lifespan, we can increase the variety within that individual category. Different types of berries, different types of mushrooms, different types of beans, different types of, and so we're looking to go at variety of every one of those categories.
Now,
And
aren't you wanting people to eat G-bombs every day? Isn't that just
yes,
the acronym to remember to make sure you eat all the G-bombs every day, whichever variety you want? Like, for example, here's this
ideally, yes.
from our front yard.
You
So
grew them in your front yard?
we have tons of them.
That is so funny. Wow.
Picked them this morning. Well, it's the season right now.
Did
And
you plant them, or are they just growing wild?
well, they're wild, but Mark used to go pick them out on the property. And then he would come back, and when he would eat them, when he'd clean them, he'd throw all the pieces out there, and then they ended up, and we have like a little forest area in our front yard. And so and then he waters it.
Oh, that's funny.
And so we get them every April, and then we eat a lot of wild stuff. Like right here, I've got chickweed. Do you ever eat chickweed? No, these are goji. These are we have goji bushes.
Oh, that's cool. And do you
And
know what parslane is?
yes, yes,
Purslane. Yeah, that grows wild everywhere, right?
yeah, it does. And this you'll love. This is wild broccoli rabe, which I know you love broccoli rabe.
Wow. That's
The-
really, yeah,
This grows all over our yard.
that's crazy. Yeah.
And then this is chickweed. That grows everywhere. I don't know if it grows in California. Probably does. It looks like this. It's like a ground cover. It comes out in the spring.
Yeah. Yeah. You can eat a lot of stuff. Before 1950, before the World War II, Americans grew half the calories they consumed in America were things people grew on their own gardens, their own homes, their own homesteads, and their own farms. And then we had the fast food movement grow, and then people, we changed obviously the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution changed people from mostly foraging to mostly eating what farmers grew. But in any case, even 100 years ago, a lot of people's diets came from foods they could forage, or foods they could grow themselves, or foods they could find growing wild. And now there's none of that anymore, or very little of that. That's why we have to be reliant on organic growers and local farms growing a variety of plants for us.
Yeah, going to the farmer's market. I always think that going to the farmer's market, even though they may use some pesticides, I feel like it's often better than getting things. What do you think? If they've used just a few, like Seven Dust or the pyrethrum, the one that's made from the
Yeah.
carnations, as opposed to going to and getting food from the supermarket, organic food from the supermarket. What do you think is, that's been stored, warehouse, shipping? What do you think is better?
Well, you're right, but here in San Diego, we have local supermarkets that have the same stuff they have at the farmers market, the same like J Organics delivering
In
both to the farmers
California.
market and to the supermarket. And it came in yesterday. It's like this. So we have such a great access to food here. And also we have access to weather where I can grow vegetables outside in my garden all year
What
round.
about people, for people that live in other places than California, like the Midwest, like me,
Yeah.
is is it better to buy farmers market stuff that may have some pesticides on it, or organic stuff from Walmart or natural grocers or Whole Foods?
It's probably, I don't know the answer because I don't know exactly what they're putting on those foods, but I would probably go with the organic, just because there seems to be more likelihood they'll have taken care not to put
Yeah.
done too much chemicals on it. But I don't know for sure. Each individual farmer is different.
A lot of them say they don't put anything on it. It's just
Yeah, if they
it's
say they don't put anything on it, they could say, I'm not certified organic, but I don't spray once the food. So
right.
I guess you have to take it on an individual basis.
Okay. That was just a question that I've wondered about.
Yeah.
So the G bombs, people are supposed to, so I'm trying to get, these solutions with this, and that if people are not yet sick, or minorly have, minor issues, a lot of times, is this correct? That a lot of times just going on a nutritarian diet can reverse a lot of that. And then, so you don't get into the deep weeds like me. If you
I've taken care of 15 to 20,000 patients, and I've almost never have. I treat thousands of people, almost never have a person not getting well. You're a very unusual and severe case, and
Yeah.
there's always the interaction between environment and genetics and all the things people have, and unique to themselves. There's always unusual cases, but obviously. Most people suffer with more traditional illnesses. They have chronic headaches, they have reflux esophagitis, they have fatigue, and they're overweight and they're pre-diabetic or diabetic, and they develop high blood pressure, and they develop skin diseases and eczema and asthma and rashes, and they develop autoimmune conditions like rheumatoid arthritis and lupus and psoriasis. And yes, the nutritarian diet and my protocols have been very effective in reversing all those diseases I just mentioned. People just get well, you know. It's very
So
rare that a person has such a troubling and difficult case that they need to go to the extremes and to the research that you've had to do to solve your problems, which I respect you for, obviously. But most people have more problems that are more solved
yes,
more easily. And certainly if people just ate a nutritarian diet, like 99% of these issues would never develop to begin with.
that's right.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. If people will start before they really get sick, they can ward off a lot of these issues. And now I am getting, I because I'm involved with Dr. Hazen and some other people that are dealing with gut issues, they are seeing a lot more of that. And what I'm trying to figure out, and I think it's probably so, because even now we know that they're finding that the esophagus, a lot of the esophageal issues are, bacterial or fungal issues. But I'm thinking that if it's not too bad, see, this is my theory, and tell me what you think. If it's not too bad, yes, okay, if you've got some dysbiosis, meaning some imbalance in your gut microbiome, maybe you took a round of antibiotics, and so you got too much candida or whatever, and so now you ended up getting some esophagus issues and so forth. But it's not terrible. I mean, it's if you go on the nutritarian diet, it's going to nourish your microbiome, so the good bacteria. So then they're going to and it's going to build up your immune system. So your immune system's going to start knocking out the pathogenic stuff or the imbalanced stuff, and it's going to bring it back to normal. So somebody who's kind of in that situation, I think that the nutritarian diet can even take care of those types of issues as well as just the.
It almost always does, but there's an emphasis here, which I know for you is working for you. But remember, the microbiome isn't everything here. You
Right.
you can't just put bacteria in the body and get it to be fix its immune system. If the cells in particular, if the immune system doesn't have enough nutrients in the cells, so we're talking about health being related to the nutrient density and complexity of the nutrient levels of the wild, we're saying 1,000 different nutrients are in a piece of broccoli. So we're talking about the nutrient density and diversity in each cell, the level of toxicity in each cell, because the body's own cells produce waste products and we're exposed to waste and chemicals and nanoplastics and from the outside world too. So we have a mixture of endogenous wastes that are produced by the own body, like uric acid and formaldehyde and urea and reactive oxygen species. We have our own toxic waste production from the body itself. And then we're exposed to externally derived toxins. For example, people who have their clothing dry cleaned are more likely to get Parkinson's disease because they're taking around these chemicals. So we get this, and the body can't remove these toxic chemicals unless the body's nutrient levels are high enough. And then, so all this is interrelated. So we're talking about having a healthy fatty acid balance, an anti-inflammatory fatty acid membrane, a nutrient density in the tissues, the lack of toxic material, and then you're also adding on to that the destruction of the microbiome. And everything's interrelated, and you can't really effectively treat one without the other. But in any case, most people who come to me with chronic Barrett's esophagitis or reflux esophagitis, which is a much, develop, even if they've started to develop some damage, it reverses itself. And you know what? When you start eating the sprouts and the microgreens in the sprouts with the lettuce and the cruciferous, when you eat all these things mixed together and you put the dressing has some nuts and seeds on top to facilitate absorption of these phytochemicals, and the person learns how to chew to a liquid, which is critical because the bacteria in the mouth are mixed with the vegetable isothiocyanates and other phytonutrients in the vegetables, and you form more nitric oxide, which relaxes tissues and helps the endothelium. We're building nutrients in the endothelial tissues in the immune system, but we're also, when you chew better, you're producing, the saliva has more endothelial growth factors. The endothelial growth factors and the nutrients produced by chewing better helps the esophagus heal as well. So we're talking here about a lot of factors that interplay with each other, and that we can monitor, let's say, urinary isothiocyanates, and we can see that a person eating some broccoli or eating some green cruciferous vegetables could still have low levels of urinary ITCs if they're not chewing well enough, if they're overcooking the food. So they can cook the enzyme out, or they can not chew it well enough. When we start to make these enzymes and the nutrients absorbable, they're knowing the way to retain the enzyme even if they're cooking the food, and then to chew it better, you establish a much better ability of the body to heal these defects. And I'm saying that the body naturally wants to heal. The body is a natural little self-protecting, self-healing machine. And it doesn't really, and people who come to my retreat in San Diego and stay with me for a month or two, their diabetes is gone in 3 weeks. Their high blood pressure they're only blood pressure medications after 3 or 4 weeks. And their reflux, I can usually stop the medications after a week that they're taking. I don't just stop it cold turkey. I wean them down to a milder medication first, take it away more gradually. But then they stop having reflux, they stop having burning, their inflammation goes down, their headaches go away, they start to get better, and they're usually better in relatively reasonable amounts of time, just within a few months.
Well, I want to ask you a question about that. So with if you have to eat cooked foods, because sometimes people have to eat cooked foods because their guts not able to handle the raw foods, and you blend the cruciferous vegetables beforehand, which is what you teach,
Right.
to cause that enzymatic reaction and then to produce the ITCs. So that's what I do. And I want to know how I do. I've been doing it like twice a day. Always before I cook my vegetables, I will take some kale, some cabbage, whatever cruciferous vegetable, Brussels sprouts, and I throw it in the blender with just a little bit of water. I blend it up. I let it sit for about 20 or 30 minutes. Then I'm cooking my vegetables. Then when at the end of the cooking time, towards the end of the cooking time, I dump this blended mixture in there and cook it a little bit. And then I blend the whole thing and eat it. am I still getting the the ITCs from that?
Sure. But you don't have to let it sit more than 5 minutes.
Oh, really? Because
You know,
a long time ago, you
20
said.
minutes seems overkill, but in any case,
Okay, so I won't good. So so I did notice a difference when I started doing that, and I was growing broccoli microgreens at that time, which I need to get started again. That I was blending all of that. I did notice an improvement in my esophagus when I started doing that. Actually, at first I noticed kind of a burning sensation, and then it started getting better. From
right.
and
The only you could say caveat here is that
yeah.
if you're drinking and pureeing everything, you're not using your teeth and mixing things with bacteria and saliva sufficiently.
Well, I'm
So,
trying to chew, kind of, pretend like chewing. I put it in my mouth, the puree, and I kind of chew it I mean, most people don't have these problems that I have, but I
yeah.
chew it before I swallow it, try to kind of mix it. Is that emulating that? Am I going to get any of the?
Well, it's better you do, sure, if you're drinking a smoothie or a green it's better you mix trying to chew it, even though it doesn't need to be chewed, you know.
Right,
Do
just to mix all that stuff around.
yeah.
Okay, I want to ask you one thing about your kids. Were they ever seriously ill when they were children? Like, did got a bad flu or had to have antibiotics or anything?
I think Kara got Lyme disease. Yeah, she got Lyme disease. I also had Lyme disease once. I had to take antibiotics once
Oh, you
because
did?
I thought I had like a scab, or I thought it was on my knee, and I turned out, I thought I forgot, I thought I had a scab, or I cut myself, and I realized, wow, that was a tick bite, because it grew erythema chronica migraines rash that, so I knew I had Lyme, and my daughter also in New Jersey, she caught Lyme disease once too, and I had to give her antibiotics too, because obviously you can't just leave Lyme disease untreated. Um, so yeah, there were none of my other kids, I don't think, needed any drugs. So just
Well,
one line.
that's one of the things I always want to point out is you fed because I know for a fact, because I was there, that you fed your children a nutritarian diet. That's what they ate at
Well,
home.
I'm sure they ate pretty healthfully. And what does the word nutritarian mean? It just means super healthfully, a
Oh,
very
yeah,
healthy diet,
I
right?
mean, I remember you all had kale, you had that California creamed kale with
Right,
the
right,
cashew sauce. Then you would always have a soup, which was, or it's like a stew that was always beans or lentils and all kinds of lots of vegetables. Then you
yeah,
would have the romaine leaves wrapped in a towel so that you can
right,
put that. Then you'd always have something like steamed green beans or
right,
steamed potatoes. There were just, and so that's what everybody ate.
right, right.
That's the food they ate. So the point I want to make is that I was there. I saw this. This is, I mean, you're the real deal, and your kids were too. Maybe not by choice, but then that's what they ate at home. So they grew up on. That was their comfort food. That your kids, most people's kids get, all kinds of things, have to take antibiotics, have, as you know, ear infections,
Yeah, right,
and your kids never did. They didn't have any of that stuff.
right. Never
I
had
was
any
there,
ear
I never saw
infection.
anybody sick.
Right.
And so that's something that a point that I want to make. And I tell people that often. I'll say the Fuhrman's kids never got anything. People are like, really? I like, yes.
Hmm.
And so that's I think a very important point to make, that this really works.
Right, and I'm a family doctor. I'm a board certified family physician, which means people bring their sick kids to me. My whole career when I was young, I was taking care of families with sick kids. When I wrote the book Disease Proof Your Child, it was about this vicious cycle of going to doctors and taking antibiotics, which made to a whole series of recurrent infections that keep occurring over and over again. I would get people off this drug merry-go-round and teach their families how to live healthfully so they don't keep getting so sick. The kids would be so sick. I'd sit down with a kid across the table or across my desk, and I'd say to this kid, 4 years old, 6 years old, 10 years old, who has asthma, infections, and I'd say to them, you've got to help me get your parents to eat better, because we got to be concerned about the way they're eating, because we want them. I know you love their parents, but so I would take the focus off the kid, and I'd enlist the kid's help to be my watchdog, to make sure the parents stay on a healthier diet, to help me protect the parent from having something bad happen to them. I instruct the kid about nutrition with the whole intent of how people could develop problems when they get older, and we got to get your parents to eat better. So when the kid, instead of taking criticism about what the kid's eating, now they realize this is a full family thing. We all got to do this together. We all got to eat healthy. Don't just tell the kid what to eat. And if you're not walking the walk, the most important thing is for you to eat healthy, not the kid. Then the kid could eventually want to eat healthy, and they want to eat healthy because they want you to eat healthy, and show each other some love and care, and we're all going to encourage each other. Like I tell people, when I'm eating with you at the table, please remind me to chew better, because I could forget, you know.
Yep. Well, what this brings us to actually, I'm just looking at my notes here. Okay, the compliance, as you know, is the biggest issue. And you've kind of I know you used to have your own clinic and in New Jersey, and so now you have the Eat to Live retreat center. So you actually have people there for a month or more. They're imprisoned in a paradise for
Right.
like a month or more. And so you've got a private chef there that prepares all the food.
Four chefs.
Oh, 4 chefs.
Because if you're doing 3 meals a day for 7 days of the week, nobody could work around the clock. So we actually have 4 chefs, And if one gets sick, or something, and one has to go for a family issue, so right, 4 chefs, a full-time exercise trainer, a nurse, and 3 cleaning and house staff. So we have myself and my wife, we have a full program that people get trained to have, not just trained about learning about nutritional science, they're learning how to have robust emotional health, to de-stress their lives, to learn how to deal with their relationships with other people when they leave, to be able to feel at calm and more at peace with themselves, and develop the type of emotional health you need to feel comfortable in your own skin to be a health nut when you leave, right?
Right, and to stick with this. But you have
stick with it, right? We want to give them the tools they need to be able to continue the progress when they leave. But what good would it be if they go to a health retreat and eat healthy and live on sprouts for a week, and they go back to their old diet and they can't do what they've learned? So we make it doable and make it taste good, and we make it so people can continue the progress at home. That's what our main goal is.
Yeah, so the brilliance of what you have is you have them there long enough to get them past a lot of the food addictive issues that
Yes.
physiological and psychological, and then to solidify it.
It's the same as coming off cocaine. You needed the enforced abstinence for a long enough period of time, so they're not craving those foods anymore. You have to retrain. The brain has to remove its addictive cravings, which takes some time. That's why I encourage people to stay longer, and we have less recidivism and more long-term results when people really are informed and they stay with this longer. They stay with it.
So for people, there some people who can afford to go off and be gone for several months, and it's not cheap, but it's well worth it if you can afford it. So this is what I highly recommend for people that can't afford it, that they go to your retreat center, because you're going to take care of all of the issues surrounding food addiction, the nutritional education training, getting in the habit of eating this way, cooking classes, learning to cook that way.
Right.
You're going to learn it all there. And so that would be the easiest way to do this. Now, does Randy do the program that helps people with food addiction, and do you have somebody there that does like that kind of program, and the mental stuff and the emotional?
Yes, we have a whole team. Randy does, I think she does 1 or 2 presentations a month, but we have a whole team of people that does it, everything from, so a lot of, it's pretty comprehensive. It really works really great. And of course, I know a lot of people can't come to my retreat, but for people some people just need to get away. They can't do it on their own. But my book, Eat for Life, is my most recent book. And then people could correspond with me and communicate with me on the website at drfuhrman.com, and I can give them guidance and more support. And we have obviously a membership community that supports people, so they don't feel they're doing this by themselves alone after just reading a book. So we try to help as many people as we can, and I have both those. So obviously, not everybody can afford to take a month off and come to our retreat, but we try to keep it relatively inexpensive. Yeah, actually, it's most months we lose money because we really want to take care of people and get them well and make it affordable for them to come, you know?
It's really, I mean, it's really not expensive, but it's expensive for people, you know, that have to rely on health insurance and all that. So, I mean,
It is expensive, but we're saying we're trying to keep it reasonable.
yes.
You know, we're not, but in any case, we don't want to make it only for the rich.
Get medical care there. It's not just,
Yeah,
I mean,
and they have my medical care because I'm seeing them, I'm the actual doctor on site doing their intakes and deciding how to, coming up with their protocol of what we're gonna do with them, you know, which in some cases, when people are on blood pressure medications and diabetic
yes.
medications, they've got to start cutting back and making adjustments. We have to come up with a plan of how the wean is gonna, you know, so they can't just do it on their own. They need this kind of help, you know?
Yeah. So I think it's fantastic. And so it's 20. So I just want to, I want to emphasize, so Dr. Fuhrman has an online membership community. There are different levels of membership. If you really need some medical attention from a qualified doctor, not attention, but he can give you medical, not advice. What do you say?
Well, I'm giving them guidance and answering their
I-
questions. Yeah, so it gives them, they can connect with me and discuss what they're doing with me and get my feedback.
That's the
And they
platinum.
can
That's
take my feedback and bring it to, you know, and they can, not taking their care over for their convention when they're doctors, but I'm giving them some guidance of how they can get, you know what to do, get some good advice, lifestyle medicine advice online. And if they need to, they can take that back to their doctor with some advice that I'm giving their doctor of how to care for them even.
okay, so that's one level. That's the top tier of the membership. So you can get a membership where you just have access to recipes. You can read the Ask the Doctor forum, and then there's also the community where you can connect with other people, and other people are sharing what's gone on with them, what's helped them, and so forth.
Right.
And so it's a wonderful way, because I'm trying to show people there's solutions to this. It's a lot of information to explain because it's so different from the way people normally live. So to transition to this really, the way that we're designed to live, basically, to as best we can in this world that is quite toxic, is the solution. So Dr. Fuhrman provides several different solutions. He's very solution oriented, even though he's filled with information. And so one of them is his Eat to Live retreat, where you can go there and stay for a month or several months. Then there are his memberships, which he has different levels at different prices and offering different things that you can have access to. And then he has his books, and he also has some education programs where you can really learn in depth about the Nutritarian lifestyle. He's also got I believe a coaching certification.
Coaching certification. People want to utilize this as a coach, right? As a health coach.
Okay, so I've done the retreat, the memberships, the education.
And we have some products and foods that make it easier for people to do this, like a salad dressing or a Thai curry sauce or a tomato sauce without salt and sugar in it, or so we have we try to make it so for people who don't want to spend their life making food in the kitchen, we can give them ways how to make food taste good without having to be cooking food all day long. So we have some things like tomato sauce and kind of healthy ketchup, because you can't get like no salt ketchup or no sugar ketchup out there. You just can't find some things I'm recommending people take, you know what I mean?
And so, yeah, that's why you created them. And then you've got some tasty things as
Yeah.
well, like the date nut pop'ems and
The G-Bombs bars, we have a bars made with greens, beans, onions, mushrooms. We have a bar that tastes really good, but it has because I like them. The Pop'ems are good for children, but they have a little more dates in them than the G-Bombs bar are lower glycemic with more vegetables in them. You know what I mean?
Mhm. And those are great because I always, when I'm working with people, when they're first doing this, is I don't want them to go out in their car running errands without something healthy to eat, even though I don't recommend snacking later on, but that fine
Right.
tuning the diet later. And so things like the G-Bomb bar and things like that, just to have in your purse Because if you get hungry and you're out, you can't get home to your food, you're going to be very tempted to stop and eat something unhealthily.
Right.
And so we've covered education, products, the retreat, the memberships. Anything else you offer?
Well, it's just, I think that people should try to mostly learn. I think when they learn about, we have videos. I have the Eat to Live podcast.
Yes.
People can come and watch my podcast called the Eat to Live podcast with my daughter, Jenna.
Where are those?
Those are on our website or on YouTube.
Okay, well, let's give everybody your website.
It's drfuhrman.com, and they can go to what they can watch the podcasts without advertisements, I think, as a on the website. But if you want to go to YouTube, you could watch the podcast on YouTube, but then you get some ads in there. You know what I mean? I think on YouTube. But the Eat to Live podcast, it's great that we have so many people watching our Eat to Live podcasts and giving their comments and belief. It's always nice to see the people's involvement and learning that way too. So yes, we have videos, and I have masterclass on the website. I have a beat cancer and autoimmune disease masterclass on the website. And we have events, like we have an event coming up, a detox weight loss event, a team, an organized event where people join for like 6 weeks, and we give them a whole program to do this through the internet instead of coming to the retreat. They get this all online. So we have some events that we do a couple times a year as well.
And that's all listed on drfuhrman.com. And that's, and just to spell it, it's drfuhrman.com. So all of this, they can have access to that on the
Correct.
site. Now, so we have a master. Do you have just a master class, which is just basic Nutritarian?
Yes. Even at the lowest rate of membership, they get the Eat to Live Masterclass as part of their membership. So they can watch a series of 20-minute videos or the scripts, they're transcribed. So they can review that, they can watch video, they can listen to it in their car, so yes, they can do the masterclass, they can do podcasts, they can watch. We have a tremendous amount of different ways people can educate themselves and motivate themselves to take better care of their health.
Do you have anything on, because once you did a webinar on mental health, or it was incredible. It had all these, it was broken down really well, and you had all these different treatments.
I would start with, I have a podcast on emotional health.
Okay.
I would start with the Eat to Live podcast on emotional health and hear what I have to say about that subject as a starting point. At this point, we have so many great options, from saffron to 5-HTP there's so many things we can help with people with emotional problems, both physically, naturally, but also just the way people think now with this, with the Buddhist type meditation and the getting rid of your ego and getting back to really living with a new way of seeing the world, of appreciating the outside world with positivity and compassion. We can help people tremendous ways. So we talk about having internally generated self-esteem instead of trying to please other people and make other people like us. We work. So we have it. So I think a good place to start would be the podcast on that subject.
Great. So I think that pretty much covers it, don't you?
Yeah, that's terrific.
Any other solutions that you can offer, Dr. Fuhrman?
Well, I just want to tell people that they shouldn't be content or resigned to being sick the rest of their life. They can get well, and that your body, and we can live longer with our full mental faculties and feeling well into our later years. So we do have this opportunity to have a good and a healthy and happy life and a peaceful life. So we want the best. Well, obviously, we're hoping, the best for everybody, and wishing you all, much happiness and good health.
So thank you so much, Joel, for taking this time to do
My
this.
pleasure. My pleasure. All right. Thank you. All right. Good luck with everything you're doing, Robin. Appreciate it.